It is fall and I can finally wear an overshirt, which I mean, come on. Come on. Howdy. My name is Nonat, and this video's gonna be a little bit weird. The title obviously makes it seem incredibly negative, but I'm gonna do what I can to look at the silver lining and explain things in a way that isn't just poo-pooing on War of Immortals, because that is not my goal in any way, shape, or form with this video. Though it may be hard to believe that. I mean, the title of this video is Why War of the Mortals Feels Disappointing. And there's a key word in that title that this video is going to be entirely about. And that is feels disappointing. Let's get into it. So the big first thing I want to get into regarding War of Immortals is the very fact that it's a really good book, which is a weird way to start this tentatively negative video. War of Immortals has amazing artwork, as Paizo always want to do. The formatting and the structure of everything is incredible. It's easy to follow. There is so much content in this book. So why does it feel so disappointing? Well, let's break it down really quick, because the answer right away might seem simple, but stick with me, because there are layers to this feeling, and I believe I'm not alone in feeling this way about the book. Starting off, the book is 222 pages long, with roughly a third of that being dedicated to just in-universe lore and campaign advice. This is nothing new. Paizo loves loading their books with a decent chunk of their lore, as well as advice on how best to use their content as guidelines rather than rules. You know, a lot of like, how can you put this in your campaign? What's the right way to run Mythic? All of that is to be expected, and it's honestly really good design from Paizo's end. But it does take up a large chunk of the book. You see a 220-page TTRPG rulebook, you expect 220 pages of content, but when it comes down to it, the reality is you're only getting about 150 pages of mechanical content. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. This can be said of almost every single PF2 book ever released. Except for like the APG. The APG was just content on content on content. Like, we were spoiled year one. There's something in my eye. So what else is in War of Immortals? Well, we've got all the new Nephilim lineages, we've got the 7 new archetypes, 2 of which are class archetypes of the 2 brand new classes. This culminates in about 55-56 pages of mechanical content you can apply to your game. 32 pages of content if you don't allow rare tag things like the Exemplar. And the rest of the book is Mythic. Every single thing that I haven't covered, aside from the lore and the mechanics I just talked about, is just the Mythic system. How it works, the lore behind it, the rules, the callings, the basic feats, and the destinies fills up the rest of the 200 pages of War of Immortals. This leads to a really easy first point, but like I said, not the only point, for why this book feels a little bit disappointing. It's because we only got about 50 pages of usable content unless you're running a Mythic campaign. And I've actually talked to other people about this. If you really look into the advertising and the marketing for the War of Immortals book, you can see that all of the emphasis is put on the 2 new classes and the Mythic rules. That is what War of Immortals is about. So it's not fair to complain about most of the book being Mythic rules when it was marketed that way, right? You're technically right, absolutely. And that's why I'm not saying War of Immortals is a bad book. You'll notice every single time I've talked throughout this video, I've said it feels lackluster. It feels disappointing. Do I think War of Immortals is bad? Absolutely not. I think it is a very well-balanced book with an emphasis on a variant rule. But that variant rule was very heavily advertised as the main focus of War of Immortals. So why am I making this video? Well, it's because of this point in the script right here that I wrote ahead of time. Originally, when I was writing this out, I was like, okay, I'm not super in my... I don't have a full video here, you know? Complaining that Mythic took up too much of the book is fine, but, you know, you buy the book for Mythic. It's not a valid complaint. And then I looked at this year's release schedule, everything we've gotten this year, and compared it to the previous years. Every single year, we get one big book released for Pathfinder 2e. In 2020, we got the APG. In 2021, we got Secrets of Magic and Guns and Gears, which were basically right after each other by a couple months, and those were the big release of that year. In 2022, we got the Dark Archive. In 2023, we got Rage of Elements. All of these massive, mechanical, system-expanding books. And in 2024, it feels like War of Immortals was supposed to be the big mechanical expansion of the year for the system. After all, we didn't get anything else. We got Howl of the Wild, but that was half lore book, half mechanics. War of Immortals was supposed to be the one that adds the brand new classes. You know, the big supplemental expansion books always have the new classes in it. So we get War of Immortals, we get the classes, we get the archetypes, and then we get Mythic rules. But what if I told you War of Immortals was not the big mechanical release of 2024? Some of you may have already arrived to this conclusion as I've been explaining this. It's because War of Immortals is not that book, but we did get that book. In 2024, we have received the big mechanical supplement for Pathfinder 2e. It was Player Core 2. Player Core 2 was the massive mechanical release of the year. But it's hard to feel that way because most of that book is a reprint with the remaster updates. There's some new feats, there's some new abilities, there's some tinkering to the classes, but at the end of the day, Player Core 2 just sort of feels like a reprint of the APG with some reworked core rulebook classes in it. That, at least from my experience, is what fooled my perception of this year's release schedule. You know, every year for the last 4 years, I've always waited with bated breath for the big mechanical release. Oh, the APG's out, let's go. 200 pages of new stuff. Secrets of Magic, Guns and Gears, Dark Archive, Rage of Elements, all massive expansions. And then Player Core 2 drops, which is this year's version of those books. But it doesn't get quite as much hype. Obviously not. It's a reprint. No one's going to be nearly as hyped for a reprint than a new release, no matter how much gets changed in the little updates throughout the book. No, at the end of the day, War of Immortals is a supplementary expansion, similar to something like Treasure Vault. And when you start thinking of it in that way, the book makes a lot more sense. Books like Treasure Vault aren't there to completely expand a new chapter of PF2. They're there to reinforce or augment existing parts of the game, just like the Mythic rules have done in War of Immortals. Mythic rules aren't designed to be the new norm. They're not designed to expand the game in a new chapter. They're designed to give you a new way to keep playing with the same toys you have by Lego clicking on a few new pieces. But rather than them being actual Legos from the same Lego set, you're mixing like Mario Legos with like Star Wars Lego. This metaphor's lost all of its meaning. Abandoned ship. I'm jumping. But that's the best way I can explain it, is that War of Immortals is a supplementary expansion, not a mechanical expansion. It is much more similar to Howl of the Wild, to Treasure Vault, to, what was the one that came out in your Dark Archive? Book of the Dead. None of these ever revamped the game. They never released a whole bunch of new classes, and I think that's part of what confused people, not even confused people. I don't want to say tricked either, because it wasn't done intentionally. It's just an unfortunate recognition of pattern that led to an expectation from the book. This book is coming out in the second half of the year. This book has 2 new character classes in it. As such, it should be the big mechanical book. But it's not. Those 2 classes and the 7 archetypes are the only real mechanical expansion that it has for the core system, with the Mythic entire rule set being a variant, effectively. So that led people like me, and possibly some of you out there, to feel disappointed with War of Immortals, even if the content itself was good. You know, how often do you pick up Book of the Dead for your average PF2 campaign? Not that often, unless you are running a campaign with, you know, the dead and necromancy and things that appear in that book. And that's going to be exactly how War of Immortals functions. No, you're not always going to use War of Immortals for your games, but you are going to pick it up if you're doing a campaign involving the death of a god, or specifically wanting to run a more powerful campaign involving mythic characters. It is a new optional tool in the tool set not a new standard. So yeah, this was just a short little video that I wanted to get my mind out there, because this has been sort of on my mind for the last week, ever since I've had access to War of Immortals. I've been reading it, and for some reason, I just wasn't getting as excited as I usually was for new books. So let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with what I've said here today. I find it really fascinating that, at least on a personal level, it was that pattern recognition of books and release dates and everything, as well as the sort of missed release of the Player Core 2 being our mechanical supplement for the year. I'm just repeating myself at this point. You know what I said. You watched the video. You left a like on the video, which I greatly appreciate. Thank you so very much. I also want to give a huge shout out to the members of the No Not Ones Patreon page. If you would like to support the channel and get your name on that list alongside these great people, you can do so by pledging at $10 a month. I really appreciate all of you so much. Thank you all so very much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And until next time, November 1st, November 1st. November 1st, 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 November 1st.